I come here to read my poetry tonight as a black feminist, lesbian, poet. Poetry is the most subversive use of language that there is because it attempts to bring about change by altering people's feelings. Because I write for black women does not mean that I turn away from white women who can use or who need the things that I say. It's been the love of women that has kept me alive for so long. I will.
Come on, now, let's get it right. We got some funk for it. We got the home of the funk. Yeah, it's a crumble like crab, it's a tropical jet, just like crumble like a dream. It's our latest dream. We got groove it. Till we get it right. It's so easy. Just like swaying in the wind, just like a funky coconut.
I feel myself sometimes in the tradition, in the old basic tradition of a traveling cultural worker. That's right, just like the troubadours crossed continents singing the things they felt and believed, that's how I often feel. To begin with, I love to travel. I love to experience new people in different places, in different ways, and to learn.
I met Audre Lorde first in Copenhagen. She was reading in the women's center there. I heard her read and afterwards answering questions, and it was a really strong experience for me. It was a kind of experience where you sort of want to capture every sentence the person says and let it sink into you and stay with you. So at the time I was teaching at the university at the Institute for North American Studies. And I walked up to her afterwards and I asked her whether she would be interested in coming to this institute as a guest professor, because I was in a position to try to organize that. And she said basically yes. And later she told me that at that time she had thought I was a lesbian CIA agent.
Berlin, in some ways, was more of a relaxed time for her. She learned to deal with the stress of being black in a predominantly white surrounding. That's always there. The white people don't allow you to forget that you're black, but you learn how to deal with it. We used to take a walk in a park, for example, and some of the older German people, they would look at us as if they've never seen blacks before, just stare. And I would go in front of them and say, see, look at me, take a good look. And a lot of people would laugh and say, Gloria, stop that, come on. But that's some of the fun we'd have. We walked down the street and his friends all laughed at him. And said, Gloria, you can't do that. I said, I did.
can step in front of the camera.
Don't you think that should be a little upset?
Well, not, yeah, if you don't stay in front of the camera.
All right.
Yeah.
We started walking. We've been walking.
A section from Burst of Light from May 23rd, 1984. It was written here in Berlin. Who are they, the German women of the diaspora? Where do our paths intersect as women of color? And where do our paths diverge? Most important, what can we learn from our connected differences that will be useful to us both, Afro-German and African-American?
Very key to her being in Germany was her selecting out and developing a real consciousness among the Afro-German people, young people in Berlin.
Ich kann ja mal versuchen anzufangen. For Katharina and me, it started in 1984. By then, Audre Lorde was in Berlin, and she was for one semester a guest professor at the university and gave lectures about Afro-American writers and poetry workshops. And that's where we met in one of her lectures. And later we sat together and we spoke about each other. At that time I knew only a few Afro-German, maybe 2 or 3 persons. And it was for me very exciting to know from Katharina how she grew up, where she lived and what she was doing. And Audre asked us a lot of questions.
For me, Afro-German means the shining faces of Katharina and Mai in animated conversation about their father's homelands, the comparisons, joys, disappointments. It means my joy at seeing another black woman walk into my classroom and her reticence giving way as she explores a new self-awareness, gains a new way of thinking about herself in relation to other black women.
We tried to find other black German women of different age groups because we knew only women in our age, and we tried to find women who were a little bit older, at least 40 years old or something. And we were very lucky when we found someone who had an aunt, and she was already 60 years and had another sister who was 75, and they had a half-sister who was 90 years old. It was a big surprise for us because even ourselves we thought that our history started, I mean, not beyond 1945, somewhere after. And then I found out that the history goes back beyond the Middle Age, and that a lot of blacks came during the centuries to Germany through colonization or after the First World War.
Afro-German. The women say they've never heard the term used before. I asked one of my black students how she thought about herself growing up. The nicest thing they ever called us was war baby, she said. But the existence of most black Germans has nothing to do with the Second World War, predates it by many decades. I have black German women in my class who trace their Afro-German heritage back to the 1890s.
My mother was from Ostpreußen, white, yes, and my father came from Cameroon with a Wehrmann-Linie. That was a steamer, yes, a society steamer, and he came to Hamburg. Then he must learn was heißt Schuster? Schuster.
Ooh.
A shoemaker. Yes,
Shoemaker.
he must learn shoemaker, but it was not good for him, and he finished that, and he came to Danzig, and there he met my mother, and they married, and we are happy, very happy. We had a very good family.
One thing about my grandmother is that I find very good how she coped with all the things happening in the war, and that she's always very happy and she makes jokes all the time, although she had such different times. And so I think she stayed very young for a long time, and I think it's very good. I don't know if I can do that because sometimes I'm quite frustrated and I wonder how she could do it. And yeah, that's one thing.
Thank you. Kiss.
Afro-German. I've never thought of Afro-German as a positive concept before, she said, speaking out of the pain of having to live a difference that has no name, speaking out of the growing power scrutiny makes from that difference.
It started when Odie came one time to have a reading, that she asked another black German, is there a black community in Germany? And she said no. And then she started to look for black people. And so that's how we started to meet other black Germans, and we found a few.
And by then the idea was born to write a book about Afro-German and their history. Audre Lorde inspired us very much because she said it's not only important for you to write it down for yourself, it's at the same time important for me to know about you and for other black people wherever they live, also to know about black Germans.
The book Farbe bekennen is only written by women, and it's a book about, well, not only a problem about being a black woman. We try to make us seen in Germany, that there's an existence of black Germans in Germany.
The book was the start for the Afro-German movement here in Germany in a certain way. You know, it's the first and only book. And since then, since 1986, the Black German Association has developed.
Also kennengelernt habe ich Audre Lorde eigentlich durch das Buch Farbe bekennen. Und da hat mich das schon sehr bewegt, dass sie eben das Wort Bindestrich Menschen geprägt hat, womit ich mich also total identifizieren konnte. Und die Tatsache, dass sie nach Deutschland kam und direkt nach uns eben gesucht hat, nach uns Afrodeutschen. Also das hat mich das war einfach, das war, ja, und es war ein unheimlich starker Moment, weil ich mich zum ersten Mal so richtig, ja, gefühlt habe, dass ich gemeint war. Ich als afrodeutsche Frau hier in Deutschland.
The hyphenated people? African American, Afro-German, Turkish German. German. Yes, but you usually don't say that, right? You say, I'm German. Each one of us shares a double culture, a double life.
Und da saßen halt, ja, jede Menge Frauen, Weiße, Schwarze, aber wir Schwarzen saßen ziemlich vereinzelt. Und am Schluss der Vorlesung, da sagte sie dann etwas, was uns alle erstaunt hat. Sie sagte dann, so, sie möchte jetzt, dass alle weißen Frauen den Raum verlassen und die schwarzen Frauen im Saal bleiben und dass keine aus dem Saal geht, bevor sie nicht mit einer anderen schwarzen Frau gesprochen hat.
I hope that before you leave, you will make contact with each other and meet again in some way. And You have to hear what I'm saying. Nobody else is going to do it. You've got to do it.
Und das war schon ein sehr ergreifender Moment, weil wir erstmal gar nicht wussten, wie uns geschah. Aber sie hat es geschafft, dass wir tatsächlich aufeinander zugegangen sind. Ja, und das ist mir sehr im Gedächtnis geblieben, dieser Moment.
Yeah, that's also the way how it is.
Ihre Initiative war, uns zu vermitteln, egal was ihr macht, ihr seid nicht vereinzelt, ihr müsst euch zusammentun und müsst wirklich zeigen, dass ihr da seid und eure Stimme erheben, jeder auf ihre Art. Und also das war für mich und meine Entwicklung, ganz so jung war ich ja damals auch schon nicht mehr, ein riesiger Schritt. Also auch in den anderen auch so ein Stück weit einen Spiegel zu sehen.
The Afro-German women do a wonderful job in explaining what Audrey meant to them. You know, they use a term such as, she gave them an identity, you know. She made them feel that they belong to a community, you know.
The Afro-German group started to meet. That was at the same time when Farbe was published. And at the first meeting there would be 30 persons, and they would be very excited because for everyone it would be the first time being in a group of other Afro-Germans, people who have the same experience, the same, who could, without talking about it, would understand you.
ISD means Initiative of Black Germans. So it started just by having a coffee at a friend's place, and so we started with about 10 people, and then we decided that we have to meet other Black Germans or ask other Black Germans to come around.
Die Initiative Schwarze Deutsche war der Beginn einer Bewegung von schwarzen Menschen, die hier in Deutschland gesagt haben, wir sind hier geboren, wir werden auch hier bleiben und wir brauchen unsere eigenen Begriffe auch, um uns positiv bezeichnen zu können. Zum Beispiel den Begriff Afrodeutsch haben wir selber entwickelt. Es gab vorher nur Mulatte, Neger, Mischling, alles Begriffe, die jeder mit diffusem Unbehagen benutzt, aber wo kaum jemand weiß, was eigentlich dahinter steht. Zum Beispiel Mulatte dachte ich früher selbst als Kind, das ist wie ein Fremdwort. Und erst als ich darüber nachgeforscht habe, woher dieses Wort kommt, habe ich herausgefunden, dass es aus dem Portugiesischen kommt, von Maulesel. Und dahinter steht, dass sich Schwarz und Weiß zueinander verhalten wie Esel und Pferd.
I am excited by these women, by their blossoming sense of identity as they begin to say in one way or another, let us be ourselves now as we define us.
Also das Erste denke ich mir überhaupt, dass wir uns wahrnehmen als schwarze Frauen, als afrodeutsche Frauen, auch ganz speziell, als Teilhabe auch der People of Color weltweit. Über Audrey, über das, was sie gesagt hat, was sie geschrieben hat, wie sie uns unterstützt hat, wie sie mit uns gesprochen hat, wie sie mit uns gelacht hat, dass wir das auch können. Ja, also vorher, wir haben ja sehr oft immer vermittelt gekriegt, wir können nichts, wir taugen nichts und so weiter. Und das war einfach mal eine ganz andere Information quasi, die wir da auch gekriegt haben. Und da habe ich auch angefangen, mich so, was Organisation angeht, einfach auch zu beschäftigen. Wir haben damals dann auch das Adifra-Büro mitgegründet. Wir haben ISD auch ziemlich stark unterstützt. Das war ja schon immer eine Schwesterorganisation eigentlich. Auch das haben wir uns nie nehmen lassen, auch nicht von der weißen Frauenbewegung.
I can see these women as a growing force for international change, in concert with other Afro-Europeans, Afro-Asians, Afro-Americans. We are an increasingly united front from which the world has not yet heard.
Und von da an fing eigentlich alles an. Also mein sogenanntes, sage ich jetzt mal, zweites Leben in diesem Sinne.
A litany for survival. For those of us who live at the shoreline, standing upon the constant edges of decision, crucial and alone, for those of us who cannot indulge the passing dreams of choice, who love in doorways, coming and going in the hours between dawns, looking inward and outward, at once before and after, seeking nows that can breed future. Like bread in our children's mouths, so their dreams will not reflect the deaths of ours.
Well, one of the things that we don't do enough in America is listen. And so I really need to listen and to learn the lives of other women in different places and what they have to say to me, so that I can learn what our differences are and how to use those differences, how we can both, or all of us, learn to use each other's differences. So traveling has been a way of strengthening me, of broadening me, and of giving me more access to my own power and to the power of other women with whom I share a goal.
Dominika, Köln, Katharina, Berlin, Terry, München, Katja, Berlin, Sheila, Köln.
The group in Cologne doesn't have to be the same as the group in Munich, or the group in Bremen doesn't have to be the same as the group in Berlin. But that you continue to exist and work is what will bring you all together. Different, but together. And it's so important that you express your differences in your own work. Each one of your faces is so beautiful and so important. I know it makes you smile when I say it, but it's true. Es die Wahrheit. Die ganze Wahrheit.
Ja, ich glaube, sie hat viele zum Schreiben motiviert. Also wir haben ja dann selber damals bei ADFRA angefangen, eine kleine Zeitung rauszubringen. Afrikete und so. Also auch ja von ihr entlehnt sozusagen. Und das war eine Zeitung, da ich glaube, es erschienen 6 oder 7 Ausgaben, so, in dem schwarze Frauen so schreiben konnten, Lyrik, ihre Geschichte oder was sie eben beschäftigt hat. Es war so ein Forum oder eine Möglichkeit, andere schwarze Menschen, aber nicht nur Schwarze, zu erreichen mit dieser Zeitung.
How is the newspaper doing? How is Afrikete doing? How do you feel about it? Is it going the way you wanted it to?
The newspaper meetings, they were, I think, the most regular thing that the women's group did in the last year.
The first 2 or 3 years of any kind of initiative is always the hardest. There are so many forces outside of you that want you to break apart.
Die ersten 2, 3 Jahre von jeder Initiative sind die härtesten, weil
Everything is going to get worse, okay? You have to accept that. It's gonna get worse. That does not mean don't fight. That means don't think it's gonna be easy, because it's not. It's not.
I started out like all of us start out, a coward, afraid. It's not to say I'm not afraid now. It's to say that whether I am afraid or not, I count less. I value myself more than I value my terrors. It does not mean I don't have them. Once I take that position, I can look at them and see what it is they teach me.
a question of climate. I learned, to be honest, the way I learned to swim. Dropped into the inevitable, my father's thumbs in my hairless armpits about to give way. And I am trying to surface carefully, remembering the water's shadow-legged musk, the cannons of salt exploding, my nostrils rage. For years, my powerful breaststroke was a declaration of war. If there is one thing that I would wish is that you take whatever it is you have gotten here into yourselves and use it. You know better than I what has to be done in this place. All power is relative. No one of us can bring about change by ourselves. But for each of us, our part is vital.
Sie hat gesagt, du musst ein Buch schreiben und solltest deine Erlebnisse niederschreiben. Und das habe ich dann auch getan. Und ich glaube, ohne dass sie mich da wirklich so ermutigt hätte, hätte ich, glaube ich, das nie niedergeschrieben. Weil es mir ja darum ging, nicht ein Buch über meinen Lebensweg grundsätzlich, der ja nun nicht so rosig war, zu schreiben, sondern einfach dem was entgegenzusetzen, was mir ganz wichtig war, eben zu zeigen, das, was über Afrodeutsche beziehungsweise auch über Schwarze gesagt, geschrieben, gedacht wird, dem was entgegenzusetzen. So eine Art, also ich verstehe mein Buch als eine Art von Zeitdokument. Und da hat sie mich sehr, sehr ermutigt.
Ach, Menschenskind, das ganze Elend in der Welt. Seien Sie froh, dass Sie nicht im Busch geblieben sind. Da wären Sie heute nicht so weit. Ich meine, Sie sind ja wirklich ein intelligentes Mädchen. Wenn Sie fleißig sind mit Studieren, können Sie ja Ihren Leuten in Afrika helfen. Dafür sind Sie doch prädestiniert. Auf Sie hören die doch bestimmt. Während unser Eins ist ja so ein Kulturgefälle. Wie meinen Sie das, hier was machen? Was wollen Sie denn hier schon machen? Okay, es ist nicht alles eitel Sonnenschein, aber ich finde, jeder sollte erst mal vor seiner eigenen Tür fegen.
Because I write for black women does not mean that I turn away from white women who can use or who need the things that I say. But I write first of all from where I am, and I am not white. It does not mean that my work is not available and that we do not have things to say. We share a heritage, we share an earth, and we need each other. But we are not each other. We are different. I can know and respect your differences. You must know and respect mine. That is the only way we can work together.
I've just returned from a feminist conference and book fair in London, where for a week, over and over again, I was brought or made very, very conscious of the ways in which black women and white women do not hear each other. There are ways in which black feminists and white feminists within the United States share common problems. There are ways in which we do not share common problems. And those differences must be used creatively if we are to move together as women, black and white. Up until now, there has been great reluctance on the part of white feminists to recognize these differences, and so in many respects, we have moved separately.
She believes that a revolution is made by people, and by people who are, many individuals, and she's always again willing and capable of seeing the individual and of really putting her point on her finger on things, And I felt she was doing that very much with me. She was putting her finger on things which I had known in some way, but I had not really totally digested or translated into action.
Many white German women have said to me, speaking to me as a black woman, she said, "You have a history of racism, and you look back 400 years of slavery. I, as a white German woman, look back one generation and I can't bear to look anymore." That may sound funny to you, but it sounds very sad to me because it places so many white German women in a position of absolute immobility and separation from their own power. Racism in Germany, in Switzerland, in Europe must become an issue for white feminists because it is part of your lives, it affects your lives in every way, and the fact that you are not people of color does not make you safe from the effects of it. We must begin to see that because we do not share the actual tenets of problems that affect women, we are nonetheless, each of us, affected by them.
Ich habe von ihr gelernt, nicht die Unterschiede zwischen den Menschen oder unter uns sind eigentlich das Trennende, sondern dieses nicht damit umgehen und dieses Schweigen. Und das ist mir oft auch nicht gelungen und das finde ich immer wieder schwierig, aber auch das ist es immer wieder wert, dahin zu gucken und das weiterzuleben. Und ich glaube, in dem Punkt ist sie für mich der prägendste und wichtigste Mensch gewesen, dem ich begegnet bin. Ich glaube, mir hat niemand so viel Mut gemacht und so viel mir meine eigene Verantwortlichkeit aufgezeigt und damit auch die Möglichkeit, etwas zu tun wie Audre.
Das war für mich was ganz, ganz Neues auch. Und als ich Audre zum ersten Mal kennenlernte, hatte ich auch das erste Mal das Gefühl, das, was sie schreibt und die Person ist auch identisch.
I am a black, lesbian, feminist, warrior, poet, mother, doing my work. Your power is not my power. You are able to do and to reach and to speak to people who can never hear me, but you are here now. You can hear me. So part of your work must be to speak to people to whom I cannot reach.
Da steht ja sehr viel auch über Rassismus drin und weniger über Feminismus. Und dann dachte ich auch, was habe ich denn mit Rassismus eigentlich so zu tun? Und als ich dann die Gedichte las, da wurde das sehr nah.
Poetry is not one way. It's a circular happening. And there's got to be something coming back, first of all, because for me, but also in that you use whatever it is that you've gotten for some kind of connection.
If feminists are concerned with the oppression of women, they must be concerned with the oppression of all women. So if you're concerned with the oppression of all women, you have to be concerned with the particular oppression of color that women of color suffer.
What it requires is that we use all of ourselves and that we feel deeply those things which we believe. So I believe in poetry, really committed poetry, the process of speaking those things which we feel as we live self-consciously, we have genuine movements toward action. That we... Oh.
Also für sie ist Dichtung das Subversivste überhaupt. Da ist genau der Ansatzpunkt auch zum Handeln.
Jetzt würde ich gerne wissen, wie du an dem arbeitest, was du schreibst.
When you are born black and female in a society that defines humanness as white and male, we recognize very early that survival is not a theoretical problem. It is a problem of day-to-day living. We learn that we are endangered, that we are always at risk. And that lends a certain commitment to every aspect of our lives. And poetry is part of my living. It's part of my arsenal. It is one of my weapons by which I attempt to change what must be our common future.
In order to bring about political and social change, we must have people, warriors, who are sensitized to their own sense and their own needs as well, so that we operate not out of some external directive, this is good, but from an internal sense of this is right. One of the aims of poetry is to change feeling.
Also wir sind alle hingekommen mit unseren Gedichten, ganz stolz, was wir da fabriziert haben. Sie hat uns aber sofort darauf hingewiesen, dass es darauf ankommt, bei anderen Gefühle hervorzurufen, was da meistens gar nicht der Fall war. Die einzigen, die von ihren Gedichten begeistert waren, das waren diejenigen, die sie geschrieben haben. Also, dass es darauf ankommt, auch bei anderen Gefühle hervorzurufen. Und das heißt natürlich auch, auf die eigenen Gefühle zu achten.
And if I can get you to feel things that you did not know you could or were shielded against, then I have a better chance of moving you in the direction of questioning what do you want to feel. And I really believe that if we come closer to that, we come closer to asking of all of our lives that we feel a certain way. And when we don't, the question arises, what is going on?
For those of us who were imprinted with fear like a faint line in the center of our foreheads, learning to be afraid with our mother's milk, because by this weapon, this illusion of some safety to be found, the heavy-footed hoped to silence us. For all of us, this instant and this triumph, we were never meant to survive.
Like what? Like what? No. No. Do you verstehst du, was ich sage?
Yeah.
Verstehst du, was
I
ich
do,
sage?
yeah.
Huh?
I do.
But you're not telling me. When you saw yourself on film, you said you didn't know that you looked that way. Mm-hmm. What way do you think you looked?
I have always had an image of myself inside my head.
Of you being?
And that's an image that has always been. First of all, I'm tall and black.
And in the picture you're short and light.
First of
first. Yes.
Ich bin sehr lange und sehr schwarz.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, you always have this image. Remember?
Well, I know.
Wait, let me finish.
I understand.
Remember Zami? And Zami, you said you were so big, and the picture in the back of the book is this little person, and all the book you keep saying about how big you were at this age, and there's the picture.
That's why I changed that cover. That was the second edition. That's the reason. Everybody kept saying to me, yes. What do you mean? Is that you on the cover? What do you mean? You were big and fat. And I changed. Still big and fat. Yeah. But I am, yeah. Oh, I remember.
I was starting to get the drift of her conversation, and I was beginning to get acutely uncomfortable. Ginger stubbed out her cigarette, took a deep breath, and moved a few steps closer. Look, she said, it's no big thing. Are you gay or aren't you? She took another deep breath. I smiled up at her and said nothing. I certainly couldn't say, I don't know.
Sie war ja offen lesbisch, hat sich überall geoutet, hat über Politik gesprochen, hat über ihre politische Haltung gesprochen. Es fand ich sehr beeindruckend, dass sie trotzdem, dass sie so viele Angriffsflächen bot, sich dem allen so gestellt hat. Und so, weil ich glaube, in den USA, damals zu der Zeit, als sie da gelebt und aufgewachsen ist, war es natürlich noch mal anders wie jetzt, sich zu outen als schwarze Frau und als schwarze Frau überhaupt den Mund aufzumachen. Und so war ich schon sehr beeindruckt und über ihren Mut. Also ich fand sie sehr, sehr mutig. Ja. Mhm.
The title of the next poem is Love Poem. Although in some very real way, all poems are love poems. This is a poem that celebrates the physical love between women. And at the time that I wrote it, which is 14 years ago, in 1970, love between women was not an acceptable subject for poems. And when I included it in a book that was later nominated for the National Book Award, my publisher called me up long distance from Detroit and said, I don't understand. Are you pretending to be a man? And I knew when I entered her, I was high wind in her forest's hollows, fingers whispering sound. Honey flowed from the split cup, impaled on a lance of tongues, on the tips of her breasts, on her navel, and my breath howling into her entrances through lungs of pain. Greedy as herring gulls or a child, I swing out over and over again. You don't learn about how lesbians live their lives. We're never going to get it in the history books. We don't get it in the third grade readers, right? So it's really necessary for us to just tell our stories. Some of them are funny, some of them are sad. And I strongly urge all of you to tell your stories too, not just to each other, but on paper, you know, so somebody like 3,000 miles away who might need to know what you are living. Yes. I believe in communication. It's been the love of women that has kept me alive for so long that loving between women, whether it is bitter, whether it is transient, whether it is painful, whatever, is nourishing and empowering and is an answer to the despair that we have to deal with all the time when we deal with the realities of the rest of our lives. And to the extent that we do deal with that reality out there, we need each other and ourselves even more.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes.
But I say I'm a lesbian, and that doesn't mean that I can't sleep with a man.
It does a lot of people.
It may mean that I don't sleep with a man, but it doesn't mean if I want to sleep. I mean, I slept with one, I have children. Yeah, well, sure. But the fact that I was married didn't make me less a lesbian. No, I don't from a lot of people would.
Where do all of the oppressions that we recognize intersect? And they do. And they do. I know this is a black woman. I know this is a black lesbian feminist mother. As I say, as a 49-year-old black lesbian feminist socialist mother of two, one including a boy, there's always something wrong with me. There's always some group of people who define me as wrong. It's very encouraging. I learn a lot about myself and my identity that way.
Das habe ich bis heute noch ja, praktisch wortwörtlich im Kopf, das, was sie auch immer wiederholt hat. Ne? Also ich bin eine schwarze, lesbische Frau, Mutter, Dichterin und so weiter. Und das sind natürlich die Leute, die mir am nächsten stehen, die vielleicht am ehesten was mit meinen Werken anfangen können. Aber ich schreibe für alle, die diese Werke nutzen können. Und das war kein Spruch, das war sowas von offen und ehrlich gemeint. Und man hat es dann auch in der Realität gesehen. Ich hatte dann mehrere Lesungen mit ihr organisiert. Und da wurde es dann praktisch, ne, dass alle das nutzen können. Also auch sehr viele weiße Frauen, Männer, ne, also nicht nur Gay-Männer. Und man merkte wirklich, wie diese Vibrations eben rüberkamen.
Yeah.
My question is this here. Well, in your opinion, would you think that the black woman's liberation struggle causes harm to the overall struggle for black freedom?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that. No, I really am glad you asked that because I think that it's a very real and a burning question. It's a difficult question too, and it's one that comes up over and over again. I do not see that black women identifying and affirming ourselves detracts from the black struggle. It can only add to it because we must meet each other as full people insofar as we can within a racist structure. What we need to do is ask, what are these differences and how can we work together? How can we use them to work for us rather than against us? Anything that I don't recognize that operates between you and me, if I don't recognize it, it's going to be used against both of us. As painful as it may be for you and for me to work out and to look at violence against women within the black community, as painful as it is for you, a black man, and me, a black woman, to look at it, it's much better that we do it than that the white power structures of the United States of America do it, because they're not interested in solving our problems. They're just interested in seeing that we wipe each other out, and we're doing it. Well, we have got to begin to take care of our business. And I think that the violence is an issue, and it's an issue we have to attend. And we can't do it with silence. And we can't say, well, let's not talk about it because there's some white people around and they might misunderstand. Meanwhile, we never get to talk because when do we ever sit down when there are not white people around? Do you hear what I'm saying?
Sure I do.
Well, that's, you know, I'm not asking you to agree with me, but just would you think about it?
I am an outsider here, dreaming of Europe. I believe it is the hyphenated people of Europe who represent a last chance for this continent to learn how to deal with difference creatively, rather than pretending it does not exist or destroying it.
Yeah, what is it like growing up here in Germany? It's like this.
It's never accepted that it's anything normal to be black, nothing ordinary. You're continually being asked when you're going back to your home country.
I know I'm black, I feel black, but I'm still German.
When this whole ISD thing came into existence, or when I started to know about it, for me it was suddenly a possibility to live in Germany and feel German, though being black.
We got this organization over here now for 3 years. Today is our anniversary jubileum.
I don't have to do much to help, as that it helps me. It's just to be here and dance with them and just talk to them about my hair or about my skin or something like that. Something very useful.
We're gonna got this organization to get to know each other, talk about them problems, and to do something about these kind of problems.
Yeah, she's a writer, isn't she? I've heard about her, I've read one of her books, and I was hoping to meet her this evening, but I came too late.
When were you not right?
I'm not always right. I'm not always right. Listen, I'm looking into the camera and I'm telling you, I am not always right.
But when are you wrong?
But I am not as wrong as you and the people who laugh at me would like to believe I am.
You really think people laugh at you more than you laugh at other people?
Yes, I know it. I know it. That's an example. I don't go around laughing at you the way you laugh at me. No, I don't. I most certainly do not. I give you a certain amount of leeway and respect, and even if I don't accept what you're saying, I look in the other direction.
What if people
please.
What if people
You know what I'm talking about.
Audrey, prior to meeting me, when did you ever allow anyone to laugh at you?
I feel a real lift in coming to Berlin. I think that the women's movement in Berlin is, how do you say, stark, and it has a lot of life and vitality. I look at certain initiatives that they are involved in, and it makes my heart sing to see what is possible. For example, the Chocolfabrik, the women's project. In 1984, when I was here, I remember being shown through that, and I remember the beautiful faces of the women intent and discussing what it was going to be. At that point, it was a bombed-out building. It was rubble. And I thought, these are wonderful dreams. Now I come back in 1987, and Ida showed me through the Chocolfabrik, and it was really wonderful to see what the women had accomplished in 3 years. It is not all done. It is not a fait accompli. But so much has happened. There are the rooms that they plastered and built with their own hands. There's roof garden that they trucked up earth and planted tomatoes, and it is wonderful. There are meeting rooms for battered women. There are places for women's therapy. They are planning a sauna for the Turkish women. It's heartwarming. That kind of energy I applaud and respect, and I see it operating a great deal in Berlin.
Tout ce que je fais c'est pour toi du tout. We go way up, way up, we go way up, 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 way up. We going way up. That's where we go. Way up. Till you go way up. Till you gonna go way up. Till you gonna rise.
You're doing great.
Way up.
You're posing. Stop posing. You're always posing. All right.
Way up, way up, way up, way up, way up, way up. You don't think there'll be that?
So Dagmar, what happens if you turn it on its side like this? Would you take an upside down picture?
No, when you put the reel in, it wouldn't be,
Yeah,
right?
you would.
When you put the
Sideways.
yeah, it would come out sideways.
Really?
Really? You have to.
That's no, and you see people's skirts, you know.
The year 1989 brought the fall of the Berlin Wall and initiated a period of intense social change. Unfortunately, the reunification also had its gloomy side effect, an increase of xenophobia and racist actions in Germany.
In a typical Lorde fashion, she was concerned with the fact that the day that wall was falling, a black African man was being beaten up on the subways. You see, Audrey always could look at the other side of glory. You know, as she would say, what does it mean for the wall to fall and black people still being beaten up in Germany? You know. So she would be looking at what it meant to the little people, what it would mean in terms of animosity or conflict. I mean, she could celebrate, you know, for the obvious celebratory reasons, but she also was looking at, okay, now what?
This is my 6th trip to Berlin. This is a very different Berlin. There's a very different feeling. Time will tell if those changes are signs of progress. But when we hear that along with the talk of a unified Germany comes news of black students killed outside of the university here, when we hear stories of foreign workers beaten in Leipzig inside of their own living quarters, when we hear of the killing of Turkish youths and the increase in anti-Semitic rhetoric as well as anti-Semitic actions, then we have serious question as to the definition of freedom in Germany. Each one of you sitting here has some power. I know that makes you uncomfortably enough to laugh, but you are responsible for using that power, whatever it is. And that is not altruism, that is survival.
In 1992, the pogroms against Vietnamese and Roma refugees occurred in Rostock. While we went demonstrating at midnight, Audrey and Gloria wrote an open letter to Chancellor Kohl expressing their despair at the lack of action from the German government. The letter was published in several German newspapers. They never received a response from Chancellor Kohl.
I think that despair is an endemic part of revolution because no revolution happens within one lifetime. And so we always work to capacity, believe in what we are doing, and know that we will not see the fruits of our labor, but that it is still important that we do it. I think my work is important. I think that if I do it well, there will be others who come after me who will be able to do their work. And if we can keep this thing going long enough, we are collectively going to find an answer. But it is not simple, and I don't believe that I will live to see it.
And the year I came back, you know, from here, first time, I was very weak. And that's all I did. I would sit on the porch and make necklaces. It's very satisfying. Your fingers need to make certain kinds of movements, you know?
I realized that Audrey had cancer very soon after she came to Berlin. You know, she talked to me about wanting a checkup because of some problems, health problems she had.
Berlin added years onto Audrey's life, and largely because Dagmar introducing her to alternative treatment. And that's where Manfred Kuno comes in. And this is something that I know her stateside public is not aware of. That's the role that how Berlin literally added years to her life.
Im Frühsommer 1987 rief mich Dagmar Schulz in meiner Praxis an und beschrieb mir die Krankheitsgeschichte einer Patientin namens Audrey Lorde, die seit 1978 an einer Brustkrebserkrankung litt. Die Erkrankung hatte 1984 Metastasen in die Leber und 1987 auch in die Bauchlymphknoten, das Bauchfell und die Eierstöcke gesetzt.
No, I'm able to support your killer cells with some medicaments, but the better way would be to look to yourself, to hear into yourself, and to give your body Aufmerksamkeit means attention and silent for a while.
A lack of stress.
Es folgte ein über 5 Jahre währender Prozess, in dem ich bemüht war, Audrey Lorde kennenzulernen. Ich wusste bis dahin nur weniges von Audrey Lorde. Was ich allerdings aus dem eben genannten an Krankheitsdaten lesen konnte, war, dass es sich um einen sehr ungewöhnlichen Menschen handeln musste, der immerhin seine medizinische Todesprogrammierung, eleganter formuliert kann man das auch Prognose nennen, immerhin bereits um 3,5 Jahre überlebt hatte. Das Herantasten an psychosoziale Krankheitsfaktoren, die ja bei Krebs auch existieren, war schwierig, wie Sie sich vorstellen können. Ein männlicher, weißer, europäischer Therapeut und eine schwarze feministische Schriftstellerin. Es war kein leichter Prozess, weder für Audrey noch für mich.
Okay, good. But I feel, though, that things are moving very well, all told, right? That there are certain areas that I need to attend. Good. Thank you.
I do not wish my anger and pain and fear about cancer to fossilize into yet another silence, nor to rob me of whatever strength can lie at the core of this experience, once it is openly acknowledged and examined. I have tried to voice some of my feelings and thoughts about the travesty of prosthesis, that is to say, false breasts, the pain of amputation, the function of cancer in a profit economy, confrontations with mortality, and the strength of women loving, as well as the powers and rewards of self-conscious living.
Ich denke, ein wichtiger Punkt im Leben von Audre Lorde, der einmal auch sicher zu einer relativ langen Geschichte ihrer Krebserkrankung geführt hat, lang im Sinne von nicht sehr aggressiv verlaufend. Es sind sicher ihre Aktivitäten, dass sie fortfährt in ihrem Leben, das zu tun, was ihr Leben ist, nämlich zu kämpfen. Und das ist ein Punkt, wo ich ganz sicher bin, aus meinen Gesprächen mit Audre Lorde, dass sie eine weise Frau ist. Und Weisheit ist sicher wirksam gegen Tumorzellen.
There is nothing I cannot use somehow in my living and my work, even if I would never have chosen it on my own. But not only did nobody ever say it would be easy, nobody ever said what face challenges would wear. And the point is to do as much as I can of what I came here to do before they nickel and dime me to death.
Durch ihre Chemotherapie hat sie ja ihre Haare verloren. Und wir wussten, dass also noch eine Person kam, die jetzt den Rest der Haare irgendwie entfernt. Und ich dachte schon, meine Güte, wie wird das sein, wenn ich jetzt da reingehe? Was sag ich? Kann das ja noch nicht übersehen. Auch das nimmt sie an, sagt, du siehst, meine Haare sind weg, magst du mal anfassen und so weiter und so fort. Also das waren so einschneidende Erlebnisse, mit ihr über den Tod zu reden, mit ihr am Tisch zu sitzen, zu essen oder dass sie Essen gekocht hat, was sie schon längst nicht mehr essen konnte und trotzdem eine Freude daran hatte, wie es uns eben geschmeckt hat und dass sie jeden Tag wirklich gelebt hat, dass jeder Tag für sie wichtig war und die Kleinigkeiten des Lebens wieder zu sehen. Das hat sie mich gelehrt in der Zeit.
Ma, you want a piece? Yes. Oh. Can I have another piece? Oh, yes. This. You know, my mother used to sit and fix beets, and as fast as she'd clip them, we'd be sitting there trying to snatch slices of beet from her. And she'd be, stop it! She'd be trying to protect her beets.
Racism, cancer. In both cases, to win, the aggressor must conquer, but the resistors need only survive. Now, how do I define my survival and on whose terms?
today is not the day. Well, I can't just sit here staring death in her face, blinking and asking for a new name with which to greet her. I am not afraid to say, unembellished, I am dying. But I do not want to do it while looking the other way.
I always felt, in '84 that somehow we were going to find a way and she was going to get through this crisis. I felt it was really important to gather that positive energy also.
Actually, you shouldn't take this, because if I'm going to take movies in my bed,
Yes.
I should have a nice
Genau,
bed.
guck mal, dieses Bett
You
ist
see,
nicht unmöglich.
this is the one
ja.
that I want.
Ja, genau.
This is, you see, I want this one. It doesn't match me. There. This is, if I'm going to recline, this is the one.
Okay.
There.
So what did you say you're going to...
And actually, now listen, you all have got to pay a little more attention to matching your deckers and your Kopfkissen. I notice you don't pay enough attention to that. So frequently, it clashes. I go in the morning, and your Decker and your Kopfkissen clash. Das ist nicht gut. In der Nacht, your soul's eye opens, your third eye opens, and it should see things that match, not clashes.
Ja, und so einfach so kneifen?
Ja,
So auch na, was
I believe in societies that do not use members of that society for the profit and other parts of that society. I believe passionately in societies that define the good in terms of human needs as opposed to terms of profit. I believe that it is possible to have societies that do not categorize, reject, trivialize, objectify other human beings because of their differences. That we can be different and use those differences not to destroy each other, but to move. These are the things I believe, and everything I breathe, say, do is a part of that. The way I eat, the way I raise my children, the way I teach, the way I write, and it gives me joy in the doing. I love individuals, I love human beings. You see, whether they're male, whether they're female, I have the capacity for loving.
So when the sun rises, we are afraid it might not remain. When the sun sets, we are afraid it might not rise in the morning. When our stomachs are full, we are afraid of indigestion. When our stomachs are empty, we are afraid we may never eat again. When we are loved, we are afraid love will vanish. When we are alone, we are afraid love will never return. And when we speak, we are afraid our words will not be heard nor welcomed. But when we are silent, we are still afraid. So, it is better to speak, remembering we were never meant to survive.
Also ich kann sagen, dass Orte für mich heute eigentlich noch so eine Quelle ist von der Arbeit, die ich mache. Ich arbeite sehr viel so im Großen und Ganzen im Themenbereich Menschenrechte, Mehrfach-Zugehörigkeit, Mehrfach-Diskriminierung. Und das hat sie ja schon alles mitgebracht, wie sie sich selbst beschrieben hat. Auf der einen Seite, wie sie immer wieder darauf aufmerksam gemacht hat, eben diese vielen Aspekte von Identitäten, die einfach auch eine Rolle spielen. Und das habe ich heute noch. Ich glaube, das werde ich auch bis zu meinem Lebensende haben.
Heute, wenn ich manchmal Manuskripte lese, denke ich immer noch, was würde eigentlich Audre dazu sagen? Also das trage ich eigentlich immer noch mit mir.
She came from Grenada, and then she worked hard in the factory and saved all her money. She went down to Mexico. She went back up and studied hard at university and became a teacher. And she be writing poetry.
Ich habe bei ihr vor allem gelernt, 2 Adjektive sind besser als 3 und 1 ist besser als 2. Das habe ich bis heute beibehalten. Und keins ist natürlich ein ganz anderes Schreiben.
Ich weiß, dass ich davon einfach profitiere. Dadurch, dass ich so wie ich jetzt hier einfach sitze, einfach davon profitiere, dass Frauen, Männer sich stark dafür gemacht haben, dass wir ein Recht haben, einfach selbstbestimmt leben zu dürfen.